Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'll now call the February meeting of the Sustainable and Economic Vitality Committee to order. As expected, our committee covers topics related to sustainable initiatives and the economic vitality of our great city. Note that no formal votes or decisions about city programs, policies, or budgets will happen here today. Our role, collectively, is to explore various topics with staff and stakeholders and community members and to make recommendations to our council colleagues. We want this process to be transparent, inclusive, and easy for you to be a part of whenever you choose to be. And you can share your thoughts with us by filling out a comment card about any item on the meeting agenda or by reaching out directly to us with any other thoughts, questions, or ideas. The link to the comment cards can be found on our committee webpage at tempe.gov/SEV, and you'll find contact information for committee members and staff there for non-agendized questions as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Chin. The next item on our agenda is item number 2, review and approval of meeting minutes from the January meeting of the Sustainability and Economic Vitality Committee. If there are no objections, I move that we approve the minutes from the January 11th, 2023 meeting as written. And thank you.
I have no objections, and I second that motion. So the January minutes are unanimously approved. Unanimous of 2. The next item on our agenda is item 3A, public comments. The committee welcomes public comment. According to Arizona open meeting law, the committee may only discuss matters listed on the agenda. Matters brought up by the public under public comment that are not listed on the agenda cannot be discussed by the committee. A 3-minute limit per person will be in effect. Tanya, do we have any comment cards or requests to speak for this meeting?
Councilmember Chin, Vice Mayor Adams, we have 1 comment card submitted. It is Ann Till, and Ann, we can invite you up right now. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Hello, Ann.
Hello, thanks for letting me speak. So my name's Ann Till. I'm at Alameda Meadows neighborhood chair and on the 2050 Planning Commission. And my comment is on Resilient Master Plan. And so I want to comment that I'd like to see wood chip emphasize more when you use rock, and we give rebates for rock. It just makes your yards hotter, your landscape hotter. So I think it's really important to go away from rock. Wood chip also has a lot of other benefits, like improving the soil, helping keep moisture in, so you use less water using wood chip. So wanted to get that in. Compost yard, I'd like to see that be kept local. It can be used for just more than soil. I mean, it is soil, but it could help food insecurity by giving free soil to people who are low income, and then just using wood chip around city properties. We used it at one of our neighborhood grant areas. The other thing is to take advantage of wildlife habitat spaces, like empty spaces. Like we have a 60-foot wide alley in our area, so it'd be great to have better environments for animals and for people, you know, where there's empty space. And we again did that for a neighborhood project and are planning to do another one. We did the Curry Elementary rain garden. Let's see. And then I would like to see a focus on neighborhoods and improving trees and urban heat and stormwater. We also did a neighborhood project on that last year. We did the Country Club Way Meadow to Cairo design, which is I believe, going to be in the larger Country Club Way project from the US 60 to the railroad. And so we want to make sure our little project isn't forgotten about, but so I wanted to just point that out. So one of the things as a neighborhood chair I've been trying to do is just to, add spaces like that that are wildlife and enhance the environment. And then the other thing on streetscape designs, I want to emphasize that it should be a critical priority to select people with a history of sustainability and resilience when doing those projects. For example, like the Smith Road project, when they sent the final draft out to the public, trees were...
About 30 more seconds.
Yeah, okay, trees were like an afterthought. They weren't even in the design, and they said they'd add them where they fit. That I just thought that was just so wrong. So I think that when you do a contract with the designer, that should be like one of the critical things that people use to select who wins. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No.
I just want to thank Ann Till for her service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The next item on our agenda is item 4A, current items and updates, and we'll begin with item 4A1, Resilient Tempe Master Plan. Tempe's Office of Sustainability and Resilience staff members, Director Dr. Braden Kay and Program Coordinator Madeline Mercer will be walking us through this presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for introducing us so we don't have to do it ourselves. We're here to talk about the Resilient Tempe Master Plan. So the performance measures covered by this work are our city infrastructure and assets performance measure 1.727, our water conservation and efficiency performance measure, and then our tree coverage performance measure. This work has an opportunity to positively impact each of these performance measures over the next several years. So when it comes to the climate action plan update that Mayor and Council passed last spring of 2022, we have 3 highlight actions, one of them being green codes and standards. And the green codes and standards work breaks down into our green stormwater infrastructure work, what we're doing with landscapes, and then our international green construction work, what we're doing with buildings. And so today we'll be talking about the landscape part of that work, and then at a later date we can come talk to you about the building aspect of that work. Next. So why green stormwater infrastructure? So we have an opportunity. We know, and you've heard our office talk a lot about the extreme heat that our city is facing and the continued extreme heat and drought that our city will face. And so the question is, how do we transform our city to meet the demands of extreme heat and drought? And green stormwater infrastructure allows us to change how our city looks so that we can capture stormwater, that we can reduce some of that incidental flooding that we know a lot of neighbors throughout the city deal with. We can expand shade throughout the city. We can support urban cooling, and we can do that all in a way that reduces potable water use. We know between the crisis that we have on the Colorado River and potential vulnerabilities that we may eventually have in the SRP system that we cannot have a shade system reliant on potable water. And by creating infrastructure that uses the water that does fall, that we're able to make sure that we have vegetation and shade throughout the city in a way that doesn't unduly impact our water resources. So this work is an absolute collaboration, both on the internal and external side. So this is going to require deep collaboration with our municipal utilities department, including water conservation and their environmental program. They're the ones that manage our MS4 stormwater permit. Very deep collaboration, and there's been amazing collaboration with the engineering and transportation department, including transportation planning, streets maintenance, and the engineering group. And then also a large component of this will involve collaboration with community development, including what we're doing on pilot projects. And then obviously there's a lot of other departments that will be key allies in this work, including economic development and community services. So on the external partner side, we have our Sustainability and Resilience Commission that will continue to monitor this work. You're going to be seeing a contract for the consultants that we're hiring for this work in March. There'll be collaborators that are going to be essential as part of Arizona State University. There's such great green stormwater infrastructure ideas and work already happening in our neighborhoods, and we heard that from Ann Till just now. So there's no question that there's going to be a great opportunity for Tempe residents to deeply be involved in this work, as well as with private businesses that want to move in this direction. We've had really good meetings with UDA who are interested in piloting some of these ideas as an example. We have already been doing this type of infrastructure work. So we see here College Avenue, put in over 10 years ago. Several colleagues in the room were critical to, including Eric, were critical to making this project happen. So an example of where we're already creating this beautiful tree canopy coverage and supporting it with stormwater from the street. We were able to reduce pavement on this project and increase shade and cooling. This was a pilot project we did here at Rio Salado and Hardy Drive, right across the street from the TCA. This was one of our first curb cuts where we took a existing curb, cut into it, and allowed water to feed into a bioswale. We did use compost from the city green waste program. This was a volunteer project that we did with Four Peaks and Watershed Management Group out of Tucson. That was a great early pilot project, really led by Sean Thompson and the streets team that our office helped support. We then also worked with the transportation division and Sean Thompson, and then this one was with Richard Atkins in community services. The exciting thing about this, you can see on the picture on the right, we were able to, with the help of Ed Bond from our engineering or streets division, put a scupper in, so water is actually coming off of the street into the facility. I took this picture as the program was being built, but we've been able to really reduce the flooding on Dorsey with this project. So this is an example of how a project like this really can help reduce local flooding. And then the great thing about the picture on the left is we're using this infrastructure to help support shade for transit, which is, it shows how the transit system and our vegetation and our stormwater, all those systems can come together in one project. This is a beautiful example of that. So why this master plan? What are we going to be doing? These pilot projects are very exciting, but the question is, how do we scale this across the city? And how do we have a big picture vision for what this type of infrastructure can do citywide? And so you already have approved in last year's budget funding for this master plan and utility feasibility study, as well as for some infrastructure design for some initial pilot projects. So the scope of work includes a big picture vision for how we can do this work across the city. We are really grateful to Community Services Department in terms of, we've decided instead of doing a separate urban forestry master plan update, that we're doing that as part of this project. So our urban forestry master plan was approved in 2017, and now we're going to do an update to this plan, but within the confines of this larger, broader master planning project. And what that really speaks to is that we don't want to do urban forestry separate from how we're watering our trees. We need those systems and policies to be integrated. There's also going to be an opportunity to look at our city standards that we use in our engineering department, as well as the codes that we use for private development that community services run. So there's an exciting part of that. We have this opportunity to do some infrastructure design. And then one of the feedback that we've been getting from around the country, there's a lot of excitement about the idea of this utility feasibility study. So council has already passed a stormwater fee that is a stormwater, that's going to help us fund stormwater regulation. And the idea here is, how can we continue to look at different ways that we can fund this type of infrastructure in the future? The consultant's going to be helping us look at what potential funding streams are, and that's the feasibility study component. And then Maddie's going to talk to us a little bit about the importance of operations and maintenance in this work, and that's certainly a part of this master plan as well. So,
Braden, I have a question.
yep.
Thank you, by the way, for the presentation. I had noticed on Rural Road between Warner and Elliott that there's new trees in there, but the water is just going into the road. So the way it's designed, so we need to like have like some kind of um catch system for that water, so it just doesn't go into the street. Because it's on a slope, right? It slopes down to the street. So we need to save that water instead of it going into the street. So if you could just make people aware of that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm relatively sure that the street segment in question is a project that Sean Thompson has worked on. He did some landscape, some dirt moving as part of that project, but not as much as we might in the future if we had the funding to really build out that type of infrastructure. So that's a very good example of a piece of infrastructure that could absolutely capture more water, but at the time we didn't have a funding stream or a way to capture the amount of water that area could eventually capture. So Councilmember Adams, that's just an excellent example of the type of work we're talking about doing in the future. So, and actually, comes perfectly to the infrastructure assessment component. So a piece of this is we need to understand what areas of the city where this might be possible. Streets, parks, schools, private property, in terms of commercial and multifamily, as well as private property in terms of residential. We have a whole infrastructure assessment component, making sure that we're doing interviews with all the relevant city departments and really understanding how stormwater and green stormwater infrastructure moves or is dealt with throughout the city, making sure we're taking data out of the water department, taking data out of engineering, adding our heat and heat vulnerability data, and putting that all together in terms of a full assessment of how our infrastructure is currently performing to help us build out that master plan. A big piece of this is that we know that people of color and Tempeans with lower incomes tend to live in the places that are the hottest in our community. So as we build this master plan, we need to make sure we have an understanding of where those most heat vulnerable residents are and how we help do that work. One excellent example, for example, is there's a zone in the city that we didn't think was that heat vulnerable because it's not as hot, but there's a lot of residents over 55 that live in that area. They're very heat vulnerable. So that's shown up on our map as being an area where we need to make continued investments in because we have vulnerable residents there. So there's a lot of mapping and data work that really can help inform where we're making these types of investments.
Where
So-
is that?
Pardon?
Where was that?
By Friendship Village.
Oh.
So the Urban Forestry Master Plan update, this is really going to be led by Community Services and the Parks team, including Richard Atkins. He has some different innovations that he wants us to look at with the consultant. There's also, I love that what was brought up earlier, there's an opportunity to really look at biodiversity, soil quality, and water quality, and making sure this project has a handshake with ASU. ASU has this program called CAP LTR that has long-term studies of biodiversity throughout the valley, and they have a real opportunity to make sure that we're in coordination with those scientists and folks that are looking at biodiversity, soil quality, water quality. And then also making sure that this update really makes sure that residents and private developers are very clear on the benefits of increased vegetation. So the utility feasibility study, we're looking at the pilot. We're in a pilot phase. We're doing these small projects. The question is, how do we move to this transformational phase? They're going to help us develop some alternative funding solutions. They're also going to develop a phased approach. We know that we're not going to go from having no green stormwater program or a very small one that we have today to having a $100 million program. That's going to take 10, 20 years to build out a phased approach. So they're going to help us with that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important that this coordinates with our utility rate studies. Every time we look at our water rate studies, we'll continue to look at our stormwater rate as well. We know that as part of this project, there'll be a huge stakeholder engagement component. The main one I want to flag for you is that we want to have an ambassador program so that residents and businesses that are very passionate about this work, some of which you've already heard today, can be ambassadors of this program over the next several years as we build out the master plan and build out new codes and standards and work on pilot projects. So then there's the codes and standards piece of this work. Just for an example, this is Fire Station 7 on McClintock. This is a place when we put this facility in, and this was one of the first projects I did when I was at the city of Tempe. We built the bioswale, but then the drain is at the very bottom of the bioswale. So we're not able to make sure that that infrastructure can hold all the water. It's only it's built to hold this much water, but because of the drain, it's only taking this much water. These are the types of standards that Tucson and other cities have been able to change, where they put the drain much higher up so that the infrastructure can actually take on a lot more water. So this shows you that our current code is not allowing for natural infrastructure to actually take in the water, and our codes need to be examined to see if we can allow for more infiltration to help with vegetation and to help with the soil. And right now our code is having both private development and city projects put in storm drains like this. And the field is changing in terms of how we think about this type of infrastructure. Certain cities are a little farther ahead of us in thinking about that. This project is meant to address issues like this. So Maddie will take on future work.
Excuse me. Now Tucson has a better system than we do. Is that correct, Braden?
Let's just say Tucson has done a lot of green stormwater work. They have a storm to shade program that Maddie's going to talk more about. So Tucson has definitely has a funding stream, and it has been pushing in this direction. I would hesitate to call it better. It's just in a different place than ours is.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Different place. I like different place. Okay. Thank you.
Go Sun Devils. Okay.
I'll second that. So in addition to thinking about the design and installation of green stormwater infrastructure, we really want to be mindful about how we're thinking about maintenance of these ecosystems so that we can ensure that they have the benefits that we actually want them to have, so that they're creating shade and they're capturing stormwater and reducing flooding and acting as healthy ecosystems. So one future element of this work that we are interested in exploring is developing a native and indigenous landscape maintenance guide that incorporates best practices for indigenous land stewardship for maintaining these native desert ecosystems that we're installing, so that we're ensuring that we're taking care of them to the best of our abilities and really prolonging the life of these investments. And in addition to creating a maintenance guide and communications around these topics, we're interested in working with a contractor and indigenous plant ecology expert to inform our work on different pilots throughout the city, and thinking about different ways that we can incorporate these practices into ongoing city operations with staff and contractors. So in December, we were visiting a place that's kind of okay, Tucson, with some city staff that are part of the project team for this work, so that we could really get a sense of what green stormwater infrastructure is and how it works as a system. And so we took 15 team members from Tempe, including some aides, down to Tucson to explore GSI projects in a range of different settings. So we saw examples in parks, in neighborhoods, in streets, and other public-private partnerships, so that we could really get a sense of how this infrastructure is working as a system. These are some of the different sites we went to, and I'll mention them more as I go through some of the key takeaways and learnings that we had from our trip. So the first that I have on here is sponges, not funnels. This is a common phrase that we use in the green stormwater management space to really emphasize how we're changing our relationship with stormwater. Instead of diverting it away through a funnel, we're capturing it and soaking it into the soil so that we can put it to use. And I think the biggest outcome from the Tucson trip was really just getting an example to see these urban ecosystems in action, to see what they look like as a system working together, different levels of a swale, different types of plants, so that we can create the benefits that we're after. And in addition to taking a systems approach, we also got to think about the plant scale. What type of plant material is necessary to make these infrastructure installations the best that they can be, and what type of skills are necessary to care for them. So again, on that maintenance piece, we started our tour at an agricultural museum where we got to see how things have been grown in Tucson throughout the ages, but then we stopped at a native desert plant nursery where we could see how these plants are actually propagated and get inspiration from a really innovative workforce development model where the nursery actually hires and trains people with intellectual and physical disabilities to actually propagate and install native desert plants throughout the city of Tucson. Then we got to see how important it is to work with resident champions in neighborhoods to really transform how they look, through GSI, but also to get insights on how the city should change actual policies around green stormwater infrastructure. So we were able to go to the Dunbar Spring neighborhood and get a tour from Brad Lancaster, who's a leader in the green stormwater infrastructure field, and learn more about his journey to transform the entire space. And they had some really great photos of what it looked like before, very barren, to after, where it really looked like an oasis in the desert. We also saw, on that same vein of engagement, how much time and energy the Tucson Storm Shade team dedicates to working with residents to understand why green stormwater infrastructure impacts their lives and is important to the city. So we were able to visit an in-progress GSI site at Gunny Park, where we learned about how the stormwater team is working with neighboring schools to do a citizen science project and different neighbors to help them understand why this project impacts their lives. And on that same piece, talking not just about installation, but also the ongoing maintenance of this work is very important. And I think the biggest takeaway of all was how essential it was for the Storm to Shade program in Tucson to have a dedicated staff and funding stream to do this work, because it's really what gave them the expanded capacity to scale green stormwater infrastructure throughout their city. And here's a slide with some example photos from our visit. On the top left is Desert Mission, the living agricultural museum that we visited. The middle is a greenhouse and the Desert Survivors Plant Nursery. On the right is a page from the Pocket Maintenance Guide for Green Stormwater Infrastructure that the Tucson team developed that we want to explore and create a version of our own that has devils on it and not cats. Then on the bottom left, we have our group in the Dunbar Spring neighborhood. The middle has a really great indigenous harvesting and planting calendar at Monzo Elementary, which has taken green stormwater infrastructure so far to integrate it actually into their curriculum, not just into their grounds. And then on the right is an example of a green stormwater installation that uses a lot of native desert plants.
So in terms of next steps, we're continuing with internal staff planning and coordination. You'll be voting on the master plan contract in March. The consultant will dive right in to start staff interviews in the consultant team, and then we're going to be working on launching this ambassador program, and we're going to be hoping that each council member, especially the two of you, will be able to help us identify ambassadors. We think it's going to be really important to have businesses and residents helping tell the story as we're building this program over time. So some of the outcomes that you'll see out of this work: city-led pilot projects. So there are going to be some pilot projects that we continue to do with the streets team as this program matures over the 2 years. We also have funding to design future pilot projects with the consultant, and we have funding in the CIP to continue to invest in those consultant design pilot projects. Obviously, you're going to see at some point urban cooling utility proposal that's combining these cooling green stormwater investments with our existing stormwater program. You're going to see the development of city standards, as well as the development of private development codes that help incorporate these ideas so that we can partner with developers and private property owners on incorporating this into the work moving forward. And with that, we'll take questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kay and Madeline, for your hard work and for updating us on these programs. Vice Mayor Adams, do you have any questions or comments regarding the presentation?
Oh, it's a very good, thorough presentation, and I think maybe Councilmember Chin and I should go to Tucson to look at these different areas that you all went. I think that would be really informative for us. But I don't have any questions.
Great, thank you. I had a few comments. Thank you. I really enjoyed your points, Madeline, where you talked about your takeaways from your field trip about education and engagement and rolling it into the sponges, not funnels. I think educating the rest of us, I'm lumped in with the rest of us, right? The audience that's learning about this and how to better understand the language, so we better understand concepts that we can adapt or adopt into our everyday practice. And as a city, certainly. But I think that's very important to remember, that the education and the language that comes with it is important. The the Dorsey Lane and Lemon slide that you showed us about what ended up happening where you created not just the green stormwater infrastructure, but then it created shade for the stop there. That's brilliant. I think that's a great use of and a great example of covering multi-purposes and being smart about it in the city. And I'm going to use the smart word again. You're working with other city departments and partners and other stakeholders, and that's critical for us as a community to move forward on any of these initiatives and reach our goals. It takes all of us, and it takes working together. And I applaud you and the other departments that are here that work with you. You're asking people to think a little bit differently and maybe work a little bit differently. And what it's doing is increasing efficiency and productivity and cooperation. So these are win-win-win. So I thank you all for that, not just your team, but the other teams represented here. I recently attended a meeting where I was encouraged by our congressional leadership team. They're all aware of and support local projects that increase water resiliency. And I was asked to think about and to let them know if our city was going to seek any grants or partnerships in that area, to let their offices know, because they in turn wanted to be supportive. So I offer that to you, and let us know, this committee know, if you are going to pursue those partnerships or grants so that we can communicate that as well.
Excellent. As you know, we're hiring a new grants and policy person to help us with those connections. And we also have been working very closely at the regional level on identifying grants. There's going to be Department of Interior grants, Department of potentially energy grants, several grants that will impact this work and could support this work. So we will stay in communication with you. We'd love your help in creating those connections and championing that with our federal elected officials.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. And thank you so much for understanding this is truly a multi-departmental effort. We're up here talking, but this is many departments that are going to make this happen. And we appreciate your continued leadership and continued thought partnership. So we will be coming back regularly, updating you on this project over the next several years, and look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move on to item 4A2. The County Island update. I think we're going to have Ryan Levig and Maria Loeffner from Community Planning and Economic Development, a tag team. The dynamic duo.
All right, thank you. Thank you and welcome. Councilmember Chin, Vice Mayor Adams. We're going to have some updates on the County Island. And first, I'm going to talk about the development activity updates for the area, specifically Banyan, the DeWitt project, which is not necessarily in the County Island, but it's adjacent to it. Curry Road Apartments, proposed development, and then future opportunities. So Banyan North Tempe project is currently under construction for phase 1. We've got a lot of the buildings up there currently actively being constructed right now. The phase 1 primarily consists of the outer building edges along the north of Curry and along the east side of Miller Road. What it doesn't include is phase 2 is the building wrap that includes an above level parking garage. That'll come, permits come at a later phase when they get additional occupancy for the site. But construction is actively moving along. These are actually very recent photos of the site. The other recent entitlement project site is the DeWitt at North Miller Road. It's on the east side of Miller, right across from Banyan. This is entitled for a 6-story, 300,000 square foot building with 207 units. Some of the development teams informed us that they've run into some financing issues with the project. They're looking at some potential modifications for the project. It may even come back in a major modification to still be able to make this project happen. One idea and concept that's being explored right now is taking the standard parking structure level, which is a high cost for some of these projects, and looking at getting an automated garage shift where you park the car in there and then it takes your car for you and stacks it. And they're evaluating the costs associated with that design. And I can provide updates when that comes forward. The other project is a new proposal, Curry Road Apartments. This is basically the heart of the county island. It runs all the way from Curry, extending down to Gilbert Road. You see that red line there on the map. 4 to 6 stories in range, 343 units, 9 live-work units. Already had a DRC recommendation of unanimous approval for the project in January. And we were set to have city council hearings on March 2nd and 16th. We've just been informed by the applicant that they need to again postpone these hearing dates because I guess they're running into some issues with the final closing date for the sale of the property. Not something the city's in control with, but they need to close the deal before they can have a final decision on the entitlement. So it sounds like right now it could be either March or April where they'll come back for the project. Here's the site plan. I had to take a preview look at it. So you've got along Curry Road there, they've got 2 sets of pickleball courts with their building frontage there, and it kind of goes into like a little Z formation where we've got 3 separate building sections. And then the live-work units are located in the south building next to Gilbert Drive with access onto Gilbert as well. Here are some renderings of the project design. We worked a lot closely with the commission, and actually they had a study session to kind of get some suggested improvement and refinements to the elevation. And I think they've come a long way from some of the original designs of the project. Very linear and simplistic in certain elements, but yet elegant with these use of canopy projections, uses of metal, and basically a lifting of the building that allows a passage paseo through the site. And I'll tell a little bit more about that element. So this is a portion area of the paseo that technically will go through the project site east-west. Here's another view of the site. I don't have the latest update on that. This is not the latest one. Oh, there it is. Okay, so the paseo. It's located in the future phase plan. So we originally talked about when we were looking at the county island, it was like, we have to kind of look at some master planning elements. So what can we do with connectivity and working with transportation on street opportunities? Well, when Banyan Development came forward, we had envisioned a Scoville Street alignment. And so they've dedicated a half street on their western edge of their building site that would allow that future north-south connection. And then we also looked at visualizing a mid-collector street connection between all of the county islands. So this would require cooperation with each development when they came forward. It had a major conflict with the Curry Road Apartments project. So the developers worked with city and transportation staff on coming up with a new concept that was a paseo that's a multi-use path, has a 24-foot easement with 12-foot clear dedicated so that you can allow pedestrians and bicyclists be able to connect through the county island and for future developments east and westerly. So it'll connect Scoville Street to Mary Street. They have their segment as part of the project site that goes through the building site there, a list shown on the site plan. But then, this developer has been working closely with other property owners. This kind of gives you an idea or a look into the potential of other sites that could be developed, combination of multiple parcels for other future development sites. So you see, you could get a potential phase development on the southwest portion of that site that is a cluster of development properties that could form a new multifamily development. And then there's interest potentially to cluster the eastern south portion with another new potential development, and then where that Paseo would align in coordination with some of those sites. So we haven't seen any additional preliminary proposals for these project proposals, but this developer is certainly engaged with a lot of the property owners in this area. This is another look at the Paseo design, where there's a connecting point, a cut through that allows through connection that'll have nice trees and an open, clear area of 12 feet wide.
Right.
And then take it on to you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Hello, Councilmember Chin and Vice Mayor Adams. Just to give you a brief summary of what's going on in economic development updates. So the city is part of the Brownfields Coalition that is formed between Phoenix, Avondale, and the city as part of our Rio Reimagine commitment. And through that process, we received funding from the EPA to do phase 1 environmental studies. And as a group, the three of us did this marketing outreach back in December of 21 to try to find property owners that would be interested in receiving a grant to do a phase 1. We did reach out to everyone that we could find in the county island, as well as other parts of Tempe and Avondale and Phoenix. Unfortunately, nobody from the county island participated. However, we did have a couple of our attorneys that we work with regularly who participated, one of whom is Manjula Vaz in the Curry Road Apartments. So we are making a slight headway there, just not as much as we would have liked. However, currently, as I mentioned, since Manjula had participated, we are now working with her on getting a phase 1 application through the Brownfields Coalition to do the phase 1 environmental study on the Curry Road Apartments. Our initial feedback was that it was preliminarily approved, but we're waiting for the developer to give a little bit more information on just answering some questions that the EPA had, and we're hoping to have that grant awarded by the end of this month. With respect to the real estate market, there's only one property that is currently on the market, and that is adjacent to the Curry Road Apartments. It's 1109 East Curry. Unfortunately, it's not looking very good. They haven't had any, I talked to the broker, they haven't had any sight on it, principally because it's really overpriced at $837 a square foot. Also, as Ryan was alluding to with the economy and financial concerns right now, there's been a big pullback in the development market, and that's what the broker who I talked to, she's done all of the work in the county island, represents both Curry Road and Banyan, as well as the property that's for sale. She said there's been absolutely no interest since the beginning of this year because everyone is waiting and sitting tight. So we are also waiting to see what happens with that. And that's all that I have. Any questions?
Vice Mayor Adams, do you have any questions or comments regarding the presentation?
Yes, I just for the public to know, Maria, can you explain why just a little bit more details why the developers are in the situation right now with the economy?
Sure thing, Vice Mayor Adams. So the financial markets are wary right now because of all of the interest rate increases that have been imposed. Now that interest rates are closer to 6%, and everyone is expecting them to go a little bit higher, just money has become tight. And some lending institutions are less willing to give money, and the money that they're giving costs more. So it gets a little bit harder to build a capital stack when you're looking at financing money at a very that's very expensive.
Thank you for that clarification. And I just also want to thank both of you for all of your hard work on County Island. Obviously, this is one of my favorite things to talk about and to work on and to see happen. And I think when we get these interest rates back down, we can, get more interest in more projects. So it's just kind of we're a victim of the economy right now. And but I know that we're making huge progress and that we'll continue to do so to develop that valuable land. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very important project for the city and a priority for the city council. Let's move on to item 4A3, Downtown Tempe Refresh Update. Keith Burke, Deputy City Manager, Chris Baxter from the Communication and Marketing Office, Alex Jovanovich from Community Services, and Julian Dressang from Engineering and Transportation are here to give us an update from last month's meeting. We also have Downtown Tempe stakeholders available to provide insight as well if they wish.
Thank you, Councilmember Chen, and good afternoon, Vice Mayor. We really appreciate the opportunity to come back and give an update since that January meeting. Obviously, this is a very important project in reference to the downtown, and today's update will be more of a multi-departmental collaboration in reference to talking about the key elements and giving priority project timelines, discussing the awareness of the campaign that's kicked off with communications, and as well as the current immediate responses that we've been doing with creating visible improvements to Mill Avenue, and then also planning kind of some gap responses before the entire project as far as irrigation and infrastructure can be repaired for the electrical panels in the downtown. As you listed already and spoke about who's going to speak today, appreciate the opportunity to have Community Services Deputy Director Alex Jovanovich come up and talk about a 30-60-90 plan that they've put in place to help with some of those current visible improvements. And then Chris Baxter will come up and talk through some of the campaign. And lastly, Julian Dressang will talk about the immediate timelines, specifications that you're looking for as far as moving things forward and then getting things completed with the critical budget aspect of updating the summary of how this is going to finish out. So I'll turn it over to Julian.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Councilmember Chen. Thank you, Vice Mayor Adams, for having me today. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about some of the progress that we've made, as well as talk about some of the future projects that are still in planning. As you are well aware, these projects here in the downtown touch upon many of our council priorities. These are just a few listed here, including feeling of safety, ADA improvements to make sure that our downtown is accessible to everybody, 20-minute city, making sure that we can move around and get to places where our visitors, our residents want to get to, tree coverage, making it a nice place, and also making sure that it's sustainable, and then investing in our downtown is important. So like I said, there's more that could be listed here. These are just 5 of them. So welcome to Refresh Downtown. We are excited, as I mentioned, to be working on these projects. We have a lot of projects in the queue. We're going to be talking today about some current projects that are actively happening, near-term projects that will be taking place within the next 5 to 6 months, and then of course we have our longer-term project, which is the Mill Avenue Streetscape project, and we'll be talking about the timeline for that later in the presentation. So again, we're going to talk about the current, midterm, and long-term. As far as current projects, Chris Baxter will come up and talk about our visible public outreach. Alex Jovanovich will come up and talk about our Mill Avenue landscaping that we're doing currently. I'll touch briefly upon what we're working on as far as an exclusive pedestrian interval, and then also adaptive streets. So at this point, I'm going to invite Chris to touch upon some of our visible public outreach that's currently taking place.
Thank you, Julian. Hello, how are you today? I am really excited to be here this afternoon. We've had an opportunity to do some fun things with the downtown, and you're seeing a few of them right here. We put up the Refresh Tempe website a couple of weeks ago. On that website, you'll be able to see some of the timelines of some of the things that are going along. But some of the graphics that you see here are produced in a variety of locations. We've given Downtown Tempe Authority some posters that they can share with merchants or put up wherever they see fit so that people understand what's coming in the future. You see an Ike sign down there, which at night is really beautifully visible. It kind of caught my attention when I was coming out from the FanDuel event the other day. And also, my favorite part are the new street window signs that are up. Let me see if I can move to the next slide. So these went up on Friday, and they are in what most people would consider to be the old Rulabula space. And I really wanted to thank everyone who was involved in that, from Sam Gordon with Wexford Development, Julian Wright, who has leased this property. They've given us permission to use these windows until the time that they are ready to start construction of their new project. Jack Mingo from our print shop had the opportunity to print those as well as install them with some help from our Tempe Center for the Arts staff, and we were so pleased. The great thing about these window designs, first of all, everybody who walks past them has a chance to see them. You don't get to avoid seeing the downtown Refresh Tempe. But the other wonderful thing about it is we added a QR code so that if you wanted to let us know what you would like to see in terms of placemaking or Mill Avenue changes, you can just take that website or that QR code, and we've already started receiving feedback on the Tempe Forum as a result. The other things that are part of that, there's a selfie opportunity. So if you want to stroll down there and take a selfie, there's an opportunity for that. We also put up some information about some of the spring events that are on town. We had barely had that up. I'd say it was up for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and people started stopping and looking at it. So we know that this is going to be something that's going to be really helpful. And I hope that as other opportunities come up, we can take advantage of that as well. So, and I think that might be it. We have had some media coverage already. ABC 15 did a story the other day. It was, and we expect more to come in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I do, while you're up there, the feedback that you've received via the QR codes, will you share that with us so that
Absolutely.
we're informed as well?
Absolutely. I will ask Shauna Werner's team to pull that down so that we can take a look at that and send it with you.
And it doesn't, just periodically, give us a
Okay.
batch of them.
Okay. And the question that's up there right now is temporary. Once we have the actual real Tempe Forum questions that Julian's group will have, those questions will be replaced, but the QR code goes to Tempe Forum. So no matter what question is there, those people will have an opportunity to respond to it.
Sorry, I thought your question up there was, what would you like to see in the
Yes.
area? That's what I'm
Yes.
interested in that, specific
Okay.
to that area.
Okay. Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we move farther along in design, the hope is then to build upon that and get additional feedback through the forum. One thing I failed to point out at the very beginning of this presentation is that if folks are following from home with the posted presentation, we did make some minor modifications, and so what's being shown now today might be a little bit different. So I just wanted folks to be aware of that. Next, I'm going to invite Alex Jovanovic to come up and talk about the 30, 60, 90-day plan that they're working on for landscape improvements.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Chin. Thank you for having me. So as the process for the important long-term infrastructure project for Mill Avenue Streetscape continues, landscape improvements were identified as an opportunity. So the Parks team, specifically the internal design team, was able to put together a 30, 60, 90-day plan for landscape improvements, specifically to provide immediate impact, but also keeping in mind that some of the improvements wouldn't necessarily need to be permanent improvements as the rest of the infrastructure project plays itself out. So the 30, 60, 90-day plan started with median landscape. The plan would address the medians, and then eventually on the 60s and 90-day plan would include the right-of-ways and enhancements to the sidewalk areas as well, addressing tree grates. So the 30-day plan is actually complete. That's what we just finished. So it started with the medians, and the second phase of the medians improvements will come with the 60-day plan. But this initial part was to refresh the granite in the medians and to replant. So plants such as some yucca and rosemary and some desert milkweed. And you can tell from the pictures there. So the top pictures are the before medians and the bottom pictures are the after. So you can tell there's been a significant improvement in those medians. The picture before on the slide, you can tell it was pretty bare without any vegetation. As part of this plan developed, we did work with DTA as a partner in this. So DTA was part of the planning process. Due to the condition of the irrigation, or the current condition of the irrigation, the new planting is going to require hand watering. So that's DTA is actually coordinating that portion of it. The 60-day plan will include finalizing the median improvements. So we will have some interspersed, those actually be 11 interspersed raised planters with trees planted in them throughout the medians, and that'll close out the median improvements. And then the second part of the 60-day plan will address the right-of-way landscape from 4th to Rio. So basically the edge of the sidewalks from 4th Street going north to Rio. And that area will be refreshed with granite, as well as some trees and shrubs planted in those areas. That is one area where the irrigation is in good enough condition. In most of the areas along that area, we'll be able to plant trees in ground, as well as add those shrubs without a whole lot of irrigation work. The 60-day plan is anticipated to be completed during March. And then to close out the 30, 60, 90-day plan, some trees will be installed in raised planters. Actually, a mix of trees and shrubs will be installed in raised planters along Mill Avenue. So there are currently some grates that used to house trees in them. So some of the grates have since been covered with plates over the center where the tree was actually growing out of. Some of the grates have just a bare hole there where you can see maybe a bottom of the end of a tree stump. So there will be planters interspersed along Mill, covering those areas with trees and shrubs. That part of the plan will be completed in April. One thing I did want to note is not part of the 30, 60, 90-day plan, but it was a collaborative effort between multiple areas in the city, and it's already been completed, so it's something that's current. And I'm stealing phrasing from somebody else the other day, they called it kind of the gateway area. So there's an area just north of Rio along Mill that serves as kind of a gateway entry point to Mill Avenue. And that area has been transformed with collaboration between transportation, engineering, sustainability, and parks to address landscaping there. So I don't know if you've seen the area. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it. I apologize for that. That area was installed with new native material. And then it's actually an area that's used for rainwater harvesting. Braden can probably talk about that a little bit more specifically, but so it's pulling water from the street. So I just wanted to highlight that as another component, even though it wasn't part of the 30, 60 to 90-day plan, because it already has been completed.
Thank you. So moving on with projects that are actively being done. So we wanted to make sure that we're actively working on things at the same time while we're planning longer term projects. This is exclusive pedestrian interval. It's got different names. You may have heard it before as a scramble and such, but really it's providing exclusive pedestrian time for all directions as a phase in the signal timing. And so staff is currently collecting traffic data and then developing those potential signal plans. And this is at the intersection of 5th and Mill with anticipation of deploying in mid-March with a pilot project. And so to deploy that pilot requires some additional signal heads, signage, and we know a lot of education. We need to educate our pedestrians, our cyclists, our scooter users, our vehicular drivers, because it affects everybody. This is a unique, innovative treatment that that we don't have currently in the city of Tempe. And so we're excited to roll this out, but we want to make sure that there's that educational component that goes along with that. And then finally, for current projects, we're planning some adaptive street concepts in the downtown. So staff's coordinating with the Downtown Tempe Authority to identify candidate locations. For example, the 4th Street signalized crossing of Mill Avenue, and they're working to select an artist alongside with the DTA with hopes of a May installation of that. And so as from previous presentations, these adaptive street concepts are meant to be temporary, but added splash, some character, some placemaking, and then hopefully that'll fold then into the long-term project. All right, now I'm going to transition into what we're calling some near-term projects, and this first slide is not new, but it's just an update on our lighting project. So we have our downtown festoon lighting. The design is complete on that, and we're planning on an April construction timeline for that. And then the Mill Avenue Bridge relamping that Transportation Maintenance is working on. They're actively working on doing electrical testing, and installation of those new string lights will take place in May. And then this next near-term project, the 5th Street Streetscape, we're actively working. We designed this project probably 3 years ago, and we finally got to the place where we're funding this for construction, but we have got some direction to do just some minor modifications to that previous design. So we're looking at the intersection of 5th Street and Maple for some minor modifications. This project will include the West City Hall parking lot, and so there will be additional green and landscape treatments in that area, as well as public restrooms. So in the bottom right of the slide here, you can see what's commonly called the Portland Loo, and so we're looking at installing 2 of those facilities in that West City Hall parking lot. It's been identified as a need. And we're also looking at adding protection to some of our vulnerable locations, city infrastructure. So this building that we're in right now, City Hall complex, as well as police courts building. So when we talk about that protection, we're looking at some kind of treatment, bollards, potentially concrete benches, some kind of treatment to just make sure that we're providing a secure environment for our city facilities. We're looking at awarding the CMAR contract, that's the construction manager at risk, contract in May. And then last in January, I was asked to give just a brief update on the banner pole replacement. Back in November, it was identified that the banner poles on Mill Avenue, just north of 5th Street, were compromised and damaged. We took care of that immediately, took those down and started design on new poles. And those designs are complete, and we're contracting to fabricate then those new steel poles to replace those, and so we can get the banners back up over Mill.
Julian, can you hold for a second?
Yes, absolutely, Vice Mayor Adams.
Yes. So I was just, I see that the RFP is going to go out in May. Is there any way to tighten that time frame up? Just because it's one of council's highest priorities.
For the 5th Street project.
The 5th Street, the one that you just had up, the previous slide.
Oh.
If you could put that up. Excuse me.
So
it's the Mill Avenue Bridge light replacement. No, that was that.
Yeah.
So wasn't there one before that? Yeah. Oh, it's not okay. So the RFP, I know it said May that it would go out in. Oh yeah, the award the CMAR contract. Can we make that any earlier? Is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, we're looking at every opportunity to move these projects along quicker because of the redesign of these components. It does take a little bit of time to work with our design team, and we just met with them, and they are actively working on this. So if there is an opportunity to move that along more quickly, we can to bring the contractor on board. But until we have the final design, we won't be able to start construction. But I will note that, and please know that we are trying to move these along as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then, so that's midterm, and now I'm going to speak to our Mill Avenue Streetscape, which is our longer-term project. I have slides about community input, design and construction schedule, as well as the project budget. And so from a community input, we're working closely with the DTA and neighborhood services to get the word out to the community. So beginning this month, there's the ability to comment on design through our webpage, and Chris Baxter had a chance to touch upon that, and we'll continue to update that website as information and opportunities for outreach present themselves. Also, we're using the Ike kiosks, and we plan to have focus groups and community forums and such to get that input. Then in June, we hope to have be able to use a vacant store in the downtown to actually have a pop-up office where anybody that's walking along the street can step in and ask questions, provide feedback, and we'll have information available just showing where we are in the process and what the project is ultimately going to look like. Then in July and August, we're going to have block meetings with the downtown merchants. So on a block-by-block basis, getting that feedback, meeting with them, making sure that we understand their needs and that they're getting a final product that they're happy with. Also at that time, we can be discussing what times of the year, what times of the day they're most impacted so that we can plan our construction activities in a way that's least impactful for their businesses. And then finally in September, this is something that we're real excited about, the idea of using the Flower Power Park at 7th and Mill to actually share what some of these design efforts are going to look like and actually construct them in the park. So if we're doing the shade structures, we hope to maybe construct what one of those shade structures might be and actually have it out there where people can stand under them, touch them, see them, as well as sidewalk treatments where they can walk on them and see what the different materials might look like, and then have QR codes so that then the people that are experiencing that can share that information with the city. And so you can see we're trying to provide a lot of opportunities in the next 6 to 9 months for that community input, which we think is really important. So now I'm going to walk through the schedule that we have outlined for design. Next slide, we'll talk about construction, but just want to share with you the different steps that we go through the engineering process. So the first being 15% design. This is the very preliminary. We're collecting conceptual information. We're trying to understand any fatal flaws that may exist, and we're collecting really important information. So this is where we're taking a survey, hired licensed surveyors to go along, collect existing infrastructure information, understanding where the right-of-way is, where are there easements, where do we possibly need to acquisition if necessary, because we know that is a long process, and any kind of underground geotechnical information, which is especially important since we're looking at putting in some innovative treatment to make sure our trees are healthy and surviving. So this is the very front end. After this 15% design, we move into 30% design. This is in the next 3 to 4 months where we're turning that conceptual into actual preliminary plans. And this is where we can start to share that information with the public, with our business community, and they can see kind of what we're envisioning and making sure that that matches what their goals are for that. And again, finalizing things like right-of-way, geotechnical. This is where you start to talk about construction sequencing at a very early stage. So are we going to try to do the most of the construction during the summer? Are we going to try to do that to avoid the evening dinner crowd and such like that? So we can start to understand then how in the long term that these businesses will be impacted, and we can plan for that. And then selecting our CMAR contract. The third stage is 60% design. This is where we've pretty much selected our design, and we're really moving into final design. So we've moved beyond conceptual, we've done the bulk of our outreach, and at this point we're really producing final design plans. And that's the longest portion of this process. And hopefully at that point, we know what we want and we're just designing it. And then the final design is, you can see it's much shorter. It's just making sure that the plans are good, the specs, the details are all set. Contractors had a chance to take a look at it, provide their feedback on any potential constructability issues that they might see, if there's long lead items that we know might be out there, if there's electrical equipment, we're aware of that, and we can even start doing some early procurement packages.
Julian, I have a question to make sure I'm looking at this chart correctly.
Okay.
Across the top, from left to right, are months and numbers next to them. Am I reading it correctly that they are the year, that 23 means this year, 24 means next year, and 25 means 2 years from now?
That's correct. That is the month, and then
For this design schedule?
yes. So
Okay,
we're-
I
we're-
just wanted to clarify. Thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry, keep
No,
going.
no, that's fine. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, so on the top left there, February of 2023, that's where we are right now, starting 15% design. And then looking at going through this design process, making sure that we're following all our steps, getting a public input for construction to begin then in May of 2024. And then, so then on the next one, that's a great transition into construction. So once we have these final plans, then starts the construction phase. So we're looking at, for this initial, what we currently have funded for May 2024 to 2025. We're focusing on that infrastructure backbone, which includes electrical and irrigation, which we talked about. To make these improvements, if we want to have landscaping, we have to have great irrigation, to have improved lighting and such, electrical. And so that backbone is going to be vital for the long-term vitality and sustainability of the downtown improvements that we're making. And then trying to be as least disruptive as possible with our this construction plan. And then finally, we have what we're identifying here as unfunded construction, and I'll speak to this. This will make more sense a little bit with the next slide. But the dark blue is what we believe we can fund with what the current funding level, and we know that that there's still an unfunded portion that we need to plan for. So talking about budget, our preliminary estimates from our design consultant estimated the project to be total from Rio Salado all the way to University, $21.8 million. Our current CIP funding is $8 million. And so that leaves, I think that leaves about so we have $2.2 million that you'll see as a request in the upcoming budget cycle, which will put us around $10.2 million. And then at some point in the future, we would be looking at adding the additional $11.6 million to fully fund the construction of the project. And at this time, I open to any questions or comments you might have.
And I'll pivot for a second, but can you go back and leave up for me the slide with the timeline? Keep going one more back, so we can go to that. Leave that up for me.
Sure.
I noticed that we have Lori Foster from DTA here. I didn't know if you had something you'd like to present. Also, we keep mentioning DTA by all staff has mentioned, so I didn't know if you wanted to take a minute and add anything. I know you've been involved, or DTA has.
Sure, thank you, Councilmember Chen. Yeah, we're overall extremely excited about this project. It can't happen soon enough. Now that the beautiful windows are up that Chris mentioned earlier, I've gotten lots of calls and texts about what does this mean and what is this happening. It's kind of like putting the candy out and saying, you gotta wait a couple of years. So I think I'm very appreciative about the careful attention to outreach that will happen over the next couple of months, because I know there's a lot of stakeholders downtown, merchants, residents, office workers that, and Tempe citizens that have would like to have some input on the design and the impacts to the environment. There are some things that I want to make sure that there's careful attention to, specifically the impact on some of our events and the events that happen in the downtown district, because we do tap into that electrical system a lot. I'd like it to be as minimal as possible, and not to disrupt the event schedule as much, because we have a lot of things planned over this timeline over the next 2 to 3 years. So I think it's important that we keep consistent. I would also like to make sure that the design or the construction schedule is as less impactful as possible. From conversations I've had with merchants, the feeling is we've made it through a tough time. We've made it through streetcar construction. Streetcars working now, that's great. But then a pandemic, and now we're looking at some more construction in front of our business. So I want to make sure there's careful attention to the impacts for that. So the construction schedule is really important. Summers, night times, whenever it's not as, not the busy seasons. But we're really excited. I'm looking forward to working with the city and the outreach over the next couple of months. And I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Vice Mayor Adams, do you have any questions or comments regarding the presentation?
No, I've asked my questions. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few, if you don't mind.
No, absolutely.
The first one is the scramble on Fifth and Mill that you're looking at. And I know that you're working internally. I just didn't hear you mention the diversity office and ADA compliance. A scramble is a pretty revolutionary thing, and it would be a brand new feature. And I think we need to make sure that we are in, of course we would be in compliance. I believe that to be true, but also in the testing of what we're doing there. Okay, I will admit to this. I was one of those people before I was elected that watched these meetings and work study meetings and council meetings on Thursday nights. So I remember watching the work study session on March 24th, 2022, nearly a year ago, where this topic came up, and I saw the presentation. It was fantastic. I saw and heard every single council member, the previous council, they were overwhelmingly enthusiastic about this. And you hear it from every person. You said it yourself, Julian. You're so excited to be a part of this. Let's not lose that enthusiasm. And I think the longer we drag it out, I get that things take time. And to do things well and to do things carefully, you have to take the time to do them well and carefully. But I guess I'm perplexed on a few things. When I went back and I was looking for the meetings, it was nearly a year ago. And now I'm looking at the timeline, and you've just met with designers and we're just starting a year later. That's a little frustrating. Also, I saw a great presentation in that original presentation about the sidewalks and the brick treatment and stamped concrete. Where are we on that? I don't see that phasing in or mentioned at all. And I know that will cause some disruption to our downtown. And as Lori, the DTA representative, mentioned, we've asked a lot of our partners and stakeholders downtown. And while we're trying to improve, this is going to be a disruption. And we've all worked really hard to try to activate the area. So keeping in mind different schedules also of what their events are. I don't know, but I'm going to ask you to incorporate their event schedule into your planning, to to whether you have to work on certain areas, then move to another, so that we cause minor disruption. I am also working in this capacity to try to attract and recruit businesses to our area. And I'm finding it difficult to explain, well, someday this will look different. This hole right here won't be there. Oh, the holes in the sidewalk and the brick. Yeah, we're going to fix that. So I think the signage is great and it's exciting. And I love when our different departments collaborate and come together and pull that together, and it looks great. But are we managing expectations correctly or intelligently here? Because we're going to stir up some excitement, but people have to wait 2-3 years down the road to see any of the progress. So let's, as Vice Mayor Adams says, when she says tighten it up, let's be cognizant of that. I guess I don't understand why we haven't made more progress. So I've inherited this, I feel like. It was a decision that was enthusiastically adopted, this project, by previous council. I feel that my role is to help advance a project that's already been adopted and move it forward. You know, I know you're presenting to council next week, I think. I think you're going to hear those questions. And a lot of the people that were there that voted on it and heard it the first time will be asking you the questions. What do you mean you just, and Julian, you just said you just met with designers. A year ago, we adopted this. And a year ago, our community decided that this would be a priority project. This is really important this was important to the previous council, and it remains an important project for the current council. And I urge you to adopt that sense of urgency, right? And I saw it today in here. Everyone's willing to work together to move forward. We've got some fantastic people in our community and our city staff. So I guess I don't know what's happening. And I guess I'm asking for proactive leadership here. Keep us updated on your progress. I get it that challenges will occur and timelines get skewed a little bit. Well, let us be your partner in that, right? Let us know what's happening or what's not happening. Because what we're expecting right now and what they expected a year ago was this would be advanced with a sense of urgency that they shared and the enthusiasm that they shared.
Yeah, and thank you for that information. I take that to heart. I don't want the thought to be that we've been dragging our feet. We have been moving along with that. At that time, we were working on with a design consultant for the conceptual design project, and we continued to finish that. We finished that in August, and then we went, in order to get a designer on board, we went through our contracting requirements of advertising. If it's over a certain dollar amount, we knew that we had to go through there. So I can see how the interpretation might be that we haven't been doing something or that we've been dragging our feet, but I do want you to know this is a priority for us, and it is something that we are excited about and we are moving forward on. And I'm hoping that through this presentation, you can see that there are elements that we are working on. We are working with other departments. We're working, with our public outreach. We're working with our parks department to what can we do now in the interim until we get to the point where we're doing the construction on the Mill Avenue improvements. We have Fifth Street coming, which is going to be a really neat project. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go down to kind of the west end of that project, which is because that project's going to go from Farmer to College, through working with the private development in that area. We've been able to incorporate elements of what that design will look like, and I think that's going to be a really neat project. It's not Mill Avenue, but it's in the downtown area, and that project, we will see starting construction, obviously sooner than what we're showing here for the Mill Avenue project, but we're excited about that project. So there's things going on, and we're going to continue to look for opportunities to show that and do that and show progress until the point where we can start construction on this Mill Avenue component. But we really do want to make sure that we're getting that outreach. We want to make sure that we're understanding those hot points, those touch points of when the events are, when businesses are most impacted, so that we can build this project, which is going to be an asset to our downtown community and the city as a whole, but we're impacting them as least as possible. So there is work taking place, and I commit to trying to expedite these as fast as possible, but at the same time, I don't want to expedite to the point where we're not getting that public input, or to the point where we're making errors on the design or something that when we get to construction will result in a poor product. So there's a balance in there, and I'm committed to making this happen as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilmember Chen. And I hear your frustration. I think we hear your frustration of Council too in reference to the timeline. And I think from a standpoint, coming in and talking with the team, we realize that communication needs to be better and understanding what we put in place, as far as sometimes we've spent the last 12 months in a concept. And that concept is before design, before construction. So right off the bat, we're committing to a 3-year project and making sure we're communicating that up front. Or is there ways that we can eliminate some of that early timeline and combine some things together to move quicker? And so we've challenged ourselves and challenged the team to moving forward with priority projects like this, to what can we do to meet expectations, for everybody, especially the community, to provide what they're looking for and deserve. So we are taking it to heart in reference to circling up on this, and that's why we instituted the immediate plan to get some visibility and improvements in the downtown. And I'm hoping with the color pop of the tree pots and tree wells getting all covered up on Mill Avenue moving forward will help with that, besides the median work we've already done. So moving forward, we want to get this where it should be, and make sure that the tree selection discussion continues on too, and that way of talking about the ficus and other elements that we can possibly bring in to grow things forward, no pun intended, but to really bring the downtown to where it needs to be.
I appreciate that. And I believe you. And, we're your partner in this. So it's how we react to something that really speaks to our character and how we work together moving forward. So like I said, I'd like for you all to be proactive and let us know and come to us with updates or challenges as you encounter them, to let us know, so to manage our expectations also, certainly, but also how do we help you? Right? We're not adversarial. Yeah. We're teammates.
Absolutely. And some of that too will lead into that budget discussion in reference to the total cost of the project, where we are now compared to what we actually have approved for funding, and how do we get to that where we need to be to make sure the whole project is funded.
Sure.
And that'll be continued conversations with Mark Day and Tom Dunsing to help us bridge that gap to make sure we can finish and cross that finish line.
Great. Thank you.
Any additional feedback?
None.
Thank you so
Unless
much.
you want more. Oh, Vice Mayor Adams, go ahead.
Yes. So last March, when we approved this, obviously I was on council, and then people, what I think that there's sometimes is missed by staff is that we talk to constituents. They ask us when these things are happening, and we say, well, we passed it, and it's going to be going forward, and then it really it makes us look bad that these things, it's a year went by and basically very little happened on it. And so I want staff to be mindful of the position that is happening with us, with our constituents, and it doesn't sit well with anyone. So I just want to support Councilmember Chin's discussion and her questions, and know that I feel the same frustration, and things have to change. And I don't know if as staff, if you find out that these things are passed right away. So you know that it's a priority for council. I don't know what the communication's like right now with it, but gosh, somehow we need to close these year-long gaps.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julian. We'll now move ahead to item 4B, new items for consideration. I believe we have one item, 4B1, presentation proposals for future council committee meetings. Yep. I think Vice Mayor Adams, you were going to talk about transportation.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Chin. I know we've asked transportation to come back in March with any updates on the Cool Pavement pilot program. So let's make sure that on next month's agenda, I'm going with our transportation staff to Phoenix in a few weeks to take a firsthand look at what Phoenix has done with their pilot program. And so I'm looking forward to that, and I'll discuss that at next month's meeting.
Great.
But that's it.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any new topics. Well, that's the last of our scheduled discussions today, so we'll move on to item 4C, announcements. Vice Mayor Adams, do you have any announcements today?
I don't have any announcements today. Thank you for asking.
I have one announcement. On Thursday, March 9th at 10 a.m., I have one other announcement. I have one announcement for our future. This is for our future sustainability advocates and their families. I think there's a slide. On Thursday, March 9th at 10 a.m., join me for a Green Storytime event. Storytime is free and open to all preschool-age children and their families and will be held at the Tempe Public Library in the lower level. I will be using my read aloud skills to read preschool books that highlight how we take care of the earth and our community, plus there will be activities and opportunity to take home yummy treats and meet the City of Tempe Youth Sustainability Program Coordinator, Evelyn Broomfield. Our little ones can help protect the earth today so that they will take care of us well into the future. And lastly, I want to announce our next scheduled meeting on Wednesday, March 22nd at 3 p.m. With that, thank you all for being here today. Thank you for the reports and the discussion. We will see you next month, and you can attend both virtually and in person. With that, we are adjourned.